Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to go in depth on how you can improve at Hypixel UHC Duels. So, without any further ado, let's get into the tips. So quickly before we do get into the video, I'd just like to say that according to YouTube's analytics, only a small percent of the people that actually watch my videos are subscribed to my channel. Now if you do enjoy the content and you'd like to see more videos just like this, then consider subscribing as it's free, it's the best way to support the channel, and you'll never miss an upload just like this again. Anyway, with that said, let's get into the video. So the first tip I can give is make sure you know how to PvP well. Now you don't have to be the best PvPer to win UHC duels, but it definitely does help to know what you're doing. So the first PvP mechanic you should definitely know is W tapping. Basically what this is pressing and releasing W to maintain a distance between you and your opponent. Now you can actually see me doing this in pretty much all of my fights. I'm trying to stay about 3 blocks away from my opponent because that's how far you can reach. But really it comes with practice, knowing how much you should W tap in order to keep a good distance. Now I'm sure a lot of you already know that spacing is really important when you're PvPing. So another way you can keep a distance between you and your opponent is by using your fishing rod. Again, in most of my fights you can see I'm using the fishing rod to keep them away from me. This means I have a better opportunity to attack them. It can also keep them away from you while you're trying to run away from them, whether that's if you want to heal or if you want to use a bow against them. You've also probably come across a player in UHC duels that just spams their rod everywhere, and they're kind of annoying to play against, but it actually works out for them most of the time, you'll notice. That's because they're doing a really good job of keeping a good distance between them and you, and they're just looking for the right opportunities to start attacking you. And one last PvP mechanic you should definitely know is strafing. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory. You're basically just moving side to side to avoid the player being able to hit you easily. The only real advice I can give for this is try not to make yourself predictable and don't strafe in a regular pattern. So while many people might not think it, a really important part of UHC duels is being able to bow well. Now, bows are great because they're long ranged and it works really well against passive players. So this might seem really obvious, but I see many people not actually doing this. So when you're shooting with a bow, you want to shoot where the player is going to be, not where they currently are. Because chances are they're going to try to move to avoid your shot. So again, it just comes with practice, being able to predict where your opponent's going to be. It's quite obvious that high ground is really important when in a bow fight. It means you can land shots on your opponent that you wouldn't be able to land if you didn't have the high ground. So if your opponent's just bow spamming you and they're not letting you get close to them, then try to get the high ground, as this can definitely help you. Like with strafing when you're in melee combat, it's really important not to be predictable. You should try to move in a different direction each time you dodge to the side, and just make sure the opponent can't hit you too easily. Also remember that you can build in this game mode, meaning that if your opponent is shooting you with a bow a lot, you can just build some cover and just hide behind that, and that will definitely save you a lot of healing in the long run. Speaking of healing, that's what I'm going to talk about next. So you'll notice that you have 2 different types of healing. You have 6 golden apples, which have a 1 second eating time, and then you have 3 golden heads, which eat instantly and are slightly better than golden apples. I can definitely recommend trying to save your golden heads till the late game. If you can eat golden apples in the early game while your opponent is being forced to eat golden heads, this will definitely give you an advantage for the late game. This means that you can just play really aggressive in your opponent while they're having to stay back, run away, and eat golden apples. A lot of the times, even if they're a better PvPer than you can often win fights if you just play smart with your healing. Like with a bow, it's often useful to place cover when you're healing, because you might be on 1 heart and they're trying to bow you. At that point, it's usually a 1-shot or a 2-shot. If they're trying to chase you with a sword, you can also place water to slow them down. Just remember to pick up the water if you can. This means that you won't have to go back into your inventory and get another bucket. Now, I don't see many people actually doing this, but it can actually be really helpful in some situations. So sometimes you'll see that when I'm eating a golden apple and my opponent's trying to hit me with their sword, I'll jump. The reason for that is that when you're in the air, you take more knockback. And say if I'm on about 1.5 hearts, then that's about a 2 hit. So if they get 2 hits on me while I'm eating the golden apple, I'm pretty much dead. But by taking more knockback, I can limit them to only getting 1 hit. And that can often mean that I actually survive instead of being killed by them. So essentially there's a spectrum in which a player can fall under. So you basically have your aggressive players and you have your passive players. You have the aggressive players who always go at you, they just use golden heads instead of golden apples. And you have passive players who like to sit back, conserve their healing, and use their bow a lot, and they often build structures to help them play passive. So it's important to be able to recognize what kind of player your opponent is. So if they're playing really passively, then here's how you can counter that. So on the screen right now, you're seeing me play against a very passive player. So as you can see, he's just sitting back, he's bowing a lot, he's rodding a lot, he's eating apples instead of golden heads. So basically how you counter a passive player It's just by being the smarter player. So if you try to play aggressive against them, they often have a counter for that. They'll often be able to catch you off guard, you know, and they can often find better opportunities to actually attack you. So instead, you want to let them make the mistakes, because if you just play smart enough, they will make mistakes. As for aggressive players, you just need to try and keep them away from you and be really conservative with your healing. Like I said earlier, if you can conserve your golden heads till the late game and your opponent doesn't, then that's really going to help you out, because it means you can play a lot more aggressive in the late game, and a lot of the time there's nothing your opponent can do. And the next thing I want to talk about is structures. Now, like I said earlier, you can actually build in this game mode. So one way people like to take advantage of this is to build structures that can help them in their certain playstyle. Now, structures mainly just work against passive players. Against aggressive players, you normally wouldn't have time to actually build one. So there are two main ones which I want to talk about. These are really the most useful ones and the most commonly used. Alright, so the first structure is the Flaming Arrow Shooter. I don't know if it has a real name, but so pretty much all it is a 3x3 base with a 2 high pillar in the middle, which you place lava on top of, and then you can break the 2 high pillar. So now you have almost like a fountain of lava. But pretty much what you do is you shoot arrows through this, and for those that don't know, if you shoot an arrow through lava, it will actually become a flaming arrow, and if your opponent gets hit by this flaming arrow, then they'll be set on fire. So it's a good way to do a bit of extra damage on your bow shots, and yeah, shooting through it is a little bit inconsistent. I'm not sure if that's because of Hypixel or if it's an actual Minecraft mechanic. It feels more consistent when you shoot through the lava source. That's just what I've picked up pretty much. Okay, so the next structure is pretty much this 2-block high space. So back when ranked duels was a thing, I think they removed it, right? But yeah, in ranked duels, a lot of people would just like build this and they just camp there. So pretty much all it is this 2-block high space, allowing you to do more critical hits and therefore doing extra damage. So again, works against passive players. You're kind of relying on the fact that they're just going to run out of patience and just decide to go in which case you can usually just crit them out and do a ton of damage. If your opponent's building this structure, then definitely don't go there, because most of the time, the person who's entering it is usually going to lose the fight, or at least take the most damage. So the best thing you can really do against this is just try to lure them out, and then once you force them to heal, just block it off, make sure they can't get back to it. Anyway guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you learned a thing or two. And again, if you did enjoy it, please leave a like and also subscribe, as that really does help out the channel. With that said, I'll see you in the next video.